Okay, welcome everybody to this July 2nd, and this is KCP community meeting. We are governed by CNCF Code of Conduct, which boils down, let's be excellent to each other. And I will post the agenda document in the chat. Feel free to add yourself to the attendees list. We kind of have a bit of light of agenda, but there was two topics I wanted to discuss. One is KCPCon update, and second one is, I think, is more like open discussion, Nila, like what we're gonna do with workspace types in a way. Should we do something? And if you have any other topics, feel free to add to the agenda. No, cool. So, okay, KCPCon. So you might seen it. We've basically got a date scheduled, and we're already publishing the updates via social media. I think as the last updates, we have a 14 CFP submitted and 65 people registered to attend. So I think we can do more for sure. So I would just like people to encourage people either to submit themselves or share in a social media for the event itself, like register, submit CFPs, etc., etc. So it's just I think we have a good chance to just advertise the project, maybe even have some conceptual talks and things like that. So I would encourage people to think a bit out of the box too. It's like if you have even conceptual talks or things which might not fit into the existing categories, feel free to submit them too. I think we'll evaluate them as we go. Not sure if anybody else want to add anything. We have 10 days left for CFP. Cool. Yeah, I will not boil this one to the infinity. Nila, do you want to give intro on your topic, or should I?
Yeah, basically workspace types are an ugly topic. I just don't like it doesn't fit the overall idea of KCP very well, I don't think. And same with the initializers and terminators on the workspace type. So that's basically the crux of it. Initializers and terminators on this. They're quite ugly with the combination of the workspace type. I think it would be beneficial to the overall architecture of KCP if we dissolve the workspace type capabilities, so initializers, terminators, and the workspace authentication configuration in such a way that we do not have the workspace type as the base type anymore. That's the basic idea. There's no further thought that has gone into it. Outside of it would probably be better to dissolve this construct as it is. But yeah.
I think what's missing is a bit of background. So Marvin, before you go in, like the background is that we had quite a lot of challenges. Why we thinking that in the form of CVEs or regressions or just usability things like one of the recent ones which we fixed was we had an ability that people were able to refer non-existing or some other tenants API export in workspace types. And by doing that, basically gaining access to that particular API export. So if you have a private API export, my secure instances, people by just inheriting it were able to gain access to that. So we fixed that. The topic for initializing terminators, the fact we basically have the list of every, like, people abusing it in a way, creating architectures where they see initializers and terminators and we use them as a blocking way, like they intended to be blocking to bootstrap things like, let's say, external logging account or billing, basically artifacts which should never ever should not exist before workspace is handed over to the users. But we've seen more and more that people basically use it for everything, for like bootstrapping, creating objects, secrets, config maps, you name it, which we try to address this in a documentation, but it still continues. And the fallback of that is we're getting these questions like, this is not scalable, how we can add more like scalability to that. But reality is the workspace type doesn't scale the same way as every other object in a KCP. And at this point, the discussion was, maybe should we try to move things out, like into dedicated objects, into some other things, and as Neil mentioned, reduce the basically feature scope on that object itself. And again, it's open for discussion what people think, because it was just a elevator chat up to this point.
I'm curious to hear a bit more about this, because I've been like very much out of the loop the past 6 months, and I think I don't quite understand the problems described. So I can see that, you know, it's a cross workspace, or like potentially like a cross workspace I don't know, limit break, whatever. So yeah, like airbag and all needs to be like carefully crafted, and maybe we made some mistakes along the way. I totally see that. But for example, like what you said, MJ, that people use it for anything. Isn't that kind of the design of it? Is it really like let me ask a problem. What's the problem that you've seen with people using it to bootstrap objects into the workspace? Isn't that kind of like because it's such a flexible system that we can support?
Well, the problem is that they are not using the intended mechanism for provisioning services with API sharing. So you just create an API binding in the workspace, and then you let the operator set it up. Instead, they create a new workspace type for each service that they want to have in the consumer workspace. And that means the entire chain is blocked to provision the workspace if one of them is blocked. And this is simply because they went and said, oh, workspace types. Okay, so every service gets a workspace type. And then we are just chaining this, and then we can guarantee that once the workspace is there, they are all set up and it's all fine and dandy. This is basically the start of the crux.
It's like, it's a misuse of the pattern. Simple as that. Like we have a case now where people, like, they have services like search, audit, billing, like some provisioning, like multiple services in a workspace by default, like part of the platform. And if one of them fails at the provisioning, like a search, account creation, workspace creation just fails. And we've been telling people, like, don't do this, don't use initializers for this. Like, you can give an account to the user without search and bootstrap search after that. Like, worst case scenario, you have a loading bar in the UI. Answer we're getting is, it's like, but it's a feature of KCP, like, you should handle this. I get it. It's like more. It's a bad architected thing in a way. But it led to us ourselves questioning, is like, should we do something about the type itself, or don't we? Again, open discussion.
And I think it would probably be nicer to just dissolve each feature. So I don't think that we should remove any of the features that workspace type offers. I just think that it might make more sense to dissolve these features into their own thing so that they're not bound to the workspace type. Yeah.
I think I have a hard time imagining what that would look like, because isn't that kind of, so I mean, the workspace type, maybe the name is the main problem, I have no idea, but it's kind of a template for, what your workspace should look like, right? Isn't that kind of the defining aspect of it, that you put multiple aspects into one type/template, and that's basically, gives you a comprehensive overview. What I mean, how would this look like otherwise? Like, would we have like a different API for each of these features, and how would they, how would a workspace be created? Like, do they just have spec references for all of them? I feel like we're just moving the bundling of it from the workspace type then to the workspace. I'm not sure that's gonna, I don't know, stop any misuse. That makes sense.
Now it makes sense. Like, this is like it's
maybe not. Christoph, maybe you will go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, how much of this problem is caused by the maintain feature of workspace types versus the original idea of it's a one-shot thing and that's it?
The maintain thing is another problem. To be honest, I forgot about that. But I would say,
sorry.
Yeah. No, I think the maintain is a big problem, and that's definitely something that should go, because I don't think that it's a good idea in the first place. But I don't think that the maintain is the biggest or only problem that this poses. Marvin?
Yeah, I guess I'm coming back from hiatus, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a while in this meeting now. Sorry, but what's the problem with the maintain feature? Isn't it like, kind of the only way that you can update the APIs that you roll out to your users? Like, how would they otherwise be updated?
Well, the maintain is simply that you are grandfathering old API exports, as access to API exports, even when a new person comes along that is editing an older workspace type, instead of just saying, hey, when you edit a workspace type, you need to have the authorization to bind all of these API exports. Otherwise, we do not allow you to edit this workspace type. And the maintain property is simply that we are only validating the access of the new API exports that you are adding. And yeah, there was already one CVE related to that, and it's just a very ugly feature. And yeah,
I honestly think that all the features which are currently in the workspace type, which I outlined in a document, like maintain, authentication config, terminator, permission claims, default API bindings, inheritance of VST types, like, they're valid features. I think the biggest problem is that we're in the one big object, and one can have all of them in one, or just single ones. And it becomes very hard to test and very hard to reason about when you have a, let's say, authentication config, and you misconfigure inheritance, that one don't compromise another. And I think the idea is, we say, okay, like, can we somehow split like concerns a bit? So it's easier to test, easier to reason about, instead of having this one big object, which is like global template of the world. And the answer might be we can't. But at this point, like if somebody suggests me, let's add this to workspace type, my immediate answer is no. Simple as that. Like I think we overloaded the object. It's kind of fault of myself too, because we've been doing that, but it became a bit of this like dumping ground of features. And when the next comes, I don't know where to put it. So maybe we need a separate API for this like generic workspace styling, and we just all add all of them under that API in a way. Neil?
Yeah, the I mean the idea would also be, I mean, as I said, I would like to maybe more dissolve the features into their own things in a way that makes sense. And that's basically it. It doesn't mean that, I mean, maybe we also come to the conclusion it doesn't make sense to dissolve it, but rather it makes more sense to change the status quo in a way that makes sense. That's also perfectly possible. But the first idea, after a couple problems with workspace type and design decisions that were made because people maybe misunderstood the implications of the workspace type, the first knee-jerk reaction, if you want, was, hey, maybe it's better if we just dissolve this into other functionality, so that it's less likely that people misunderstand the intent and use of it in the future, and maybe also make the API landscape a bit nicer. Marvin?
I was wondering if it maybe makes sense to start this as a kind of RC style discussion in, I don't know, maybe even GitHub discussions is a better place for this because it has threads in comparison to an issue. But I feel like this is a fairly fundamental feature in KCP, and I would like for us to like have a write-up of why we're removing it in its current form. And I personally would also like to understand if this is coming like from like who's having these problems. Maybe it makes even sense to ask like users. I mean, not that we have a great way of reaching out to users, but I'm curious about like more broader inputs on if people find this confusing, if they're struggling with it, or if they're heavily relying on it. Because I think the flip side of this is that a lot of people might be using this feature, and we might be asking some depending on what the outcome is, we might ask for a fairly substantial migration efforts. And so I'm just trying to understand basically who finds it confusing, why is it confusing, like what kind of things have been like done wrong. I think that would be like, I think we need to basically provide like a proper technical discussion I don't know, reasoning why we're removing the feature, because I don't see, at least right now, what the alternative, or like how the alternative design would look like. But yeah, that's maybe enough rambling for now.
I think I agree. We need just to outline the document, and maybe if we put it in a words in text, we'll have more clear path forward, or just stop. So yeah, let's see. I think this will fall into the bucket of every other 100 priorities which we're dealing with, and let's see if it gets out in some kind of form or shape. But just to be clear and transparent, this is not a priority to do now. This is more like a long-term conversation where we, in the last few months, for all the conversations we had with the users and downstream of this, we every time the conversation turns to the workspace type, it's a very hard and conversations to have because the feature itself is very complicated. And we're thinking, okay, how we can decomplicate it, basically, make it simpler. And I think abuse of this or misuse comes from that it's so complicated. Cool. So I don't think a part of maybe starting a discussion asynchronously, there is no actions on that. I would just ask people to think about, like, if you would re-engineer this from scratch, how this could look like. Maybe people will have some ideas. Because at this point, it was just me and Nilo discussing this. Cool. I think I just moved all of this into the wrong topic. Cool. Any other topic? Open floor.
Hi, Abubakar here. I might have missed the first one, which is the KCPCon update. I reached out to Tin from the CNCF. For some reason, they cannot give us access to the Sessionize platform for now, but that should provide update on how many people have submitted CFPs in the CNCF channel that I invited the program committee to. And she also mentioned that 50 people, as of last week, have already signed up for the event, which is a good number. At least we can get more before October. So I would think we'd have to know what's the update on the CFPs. And so we can, she can provide it in the Slack channel of the CNCF that we have.
Yeah. She sent something Tuesday, but at a very high level.
Yeah.
I honestly I was expecting more details so we can talk with certain individuals and potentially ask them to submit them. But maybe this, I never did this in this role. It's like, I don't know, maybe this is the level of details you ever get.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I asked also, but I don't know. It was also weird to me, like that they cannot give us more details than this. But let's see.
But the message I was saying in the beginning is we have 10 days left for CFP, so I think it's an okay time to do a second round of social media channeling, basically.
Okay.
Because after CFP, basically, we just need to start advertising the event itself. But now the priority should be CFPs, basically, and
Okay. Makes
trying
sense.
to persuade people to commit to contribute to the event, not to attend.
Yeah.
And the attendance marketing should come after that, basically.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Any other business? Going once? Going twice? If not, enjoy the rest of your evening and go grab ice cream, coffee, or whatever, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.